On Christmas Eve, Claire Westmore stood in her mother's kitchen, flour on her hands, while 25 guests laughed in the next room. The house glowed with lights and garlands, but the stove sat empty when Evelyn Westmore walked in and smirked at Claire Westmore. Evelyn Westmore tilted her head and asked why dinner had not started yet, as if feeding 25 people were the easiest task alive. Claire Westmore did not argue, cry, or explain that she ran a company worth millions that her family never bothered to understand. She only smiled, loosened the apron strings, and felt 15 years of silence harden into one clear, final decision. On December 23, 2024, Claire Westmore booked a one-way ticket to Miami and left that kitchen behind. She walked away from an empty stove, an unfinished table, and a Christmas dinner her family had always assumed would appear by magic. I am Claire Westmore, 37 years old, and this is how I finally stopped being treated like my family's maid. Before I tell you how everything exploded, subscribe to the channel and tell me where you are watching this story from today. To understand that night, you need to go back 15 years, to the first Christmas when I was old enough to say no but didn't. Christmas 2009 found Claire Westmore at 22, newly graduated, unemployed, and back in her childhood bedroom in Denver. The economy had collapsed, job listings vanished quickly, and every resume Claire Westmore sent felt like another message lost in fog. That December evening, pine, cinnamon, and candle wax filled the house while porcelain angels watched from every decorated corner. 15 guests were expected for Christmas dinner, including aunts, uncles, cousins, and several business associates invited by Thomas Westmore. While arranging flowers in the dining room, Evelyn Westmore announced that Claire Westmore would be handling dinner for everyone. It was not a question, not even close. It was a polished command dressed as holiday planning and delivered like routine. Claire Westmore looked up from her laptop, where another careful cover letter waited unfinished beside a half-open job site tab. She asked, as calmly as she could, whether she was really expected to cook the entire meal for 15 people alone. Evelyn Westmore said Olivia Westmore had finals to study for and could not be distracted with chores or kitchen work. On the couch, Olivia Westmore scrolled on her phone with perfect ease, looking nothing like a student buried in exam stress. Claire Westmore tried once more, saying she still had applications to finish and a marketing opening she truly wanted to submit. Evelyn Westmore cut her off with that familiar edge and reminded her that family always came first, especially at Christmas. In that house, Olivia Westmore received exemptions, while Claire Westmore received assignments wrapped in guilt and obligation. The next 2 days disappeared into chopping, roasting, stirring, baking, polishing, cleaning, and pretending the unfairness did not sting. Claire Westmore roasted a 12-pound turkey, whipped potatoes from scratch, and prepared every side dish the family expected. She made green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, fresh dinner rolls, and 2 pies while everyone else discussed guests and decorations. She ironed napkins, polished silverware, set each plate with care, and arranged the centerpiece no one would credit her for. By the time the first guests arrived on Christmas Eve, Claire Westmore was still in the kitchen with gravy on her apron. In the living room, Thomas Westmore stood with scotch in hand, smiling proudly as he introduced Olivia Westmore to his guests. He called Olivia Westmore his youngest daughter and said she studied marketing and would someday take over the family company. One of his guests, Edward Parker, warmly shook Olivia Westmore's hand and praised her for following in her father's path. Carrying appetizers past them, Claire Westmore waited for an introduction that never came and a glance that meant nothing. Thomas Westmore looked at Claire Westmore for only a second before turning back to the conversation without saying her name. That was the second sign of the pattern. Olivia Westmore was introduced as the future, while Claire Westmore stayed invisible. Helen Parker bit into one stuffed mushroom and asked who had made something so delicate, warm, and surprisingly elegant. With a dismissive wave, Evelyn Westmore said it was just Claire Westmore, who had time to cook since she had no job. Helen Parker gave Claire Westmore a sympathetic look, but sympathy was not the same thing as being seen or respected. Claire Westmore retreated to the kitchen before anyone could ask another question that would only be answered for her. What happened that Christmas did not stay there? It repeated at every holiday, every celebration, every gathering that followed. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, birthdays, anniversaries. Claire Westmore worked the kitchen while Olivia Westmore worked the room. One daughter set tables, washed dishes, and stayed behind the scenes. The other charmed guests and collected all the praise. By 2012, Claire Westmore had started a small event planning business and named it Stellar Events. She discovered she had a gift for logistics, vendors, timing, flow, and creating experiences that felt seamless and memorable. Ironically, many of those skills were sharpened in her parents' kitchen, where nobody called them talent when she used them. When Claire Westmore mentioned the business, Evelyn Westmore barely looked up from her magazine before minimizing it. She asked whether event planning meant children's parties, as if Claire Westmore's ambition could only exist in small rooms. Claire Westmore explained she wanted corporate events, launches, conferences, and galas, not balloons and cartoon plates. Evelyn Westmore only said that was nice, then asked if dry cleaning could be picked up on the way home. Neither Thomas Westmore nor Olivia Westmore asked another question about Stellar Events, so Claire Westmore stopped offering answers. Silence became strategy, and Claire Westmore built her future in places her family never bothered to look. In 2014, Stellar Events landed its first major client, a tech startup paying $8,000 for a launch party. That job brought referrals, confidence, and proof that Claire Westmore could turn precision and pressure into a real business. By 2018, she had 5 employees and an office in downtown Denver with windows facing the skyline she loved. By 2022, corporate clients and Fortune 500 companies trusted Stellar Events with high-stakes productions. By 2024, 23 employees worked under Claire Westmore, and the company generated over $4 million. Still, when she visited her parents, Claire Westmore wore plain sweaters and drove an old Honda instead of her newer Audi. She never mentioned the payroll, the revenue, or the magazine features, because every truth she offered was usually dismissed. Her family did not ask where she lived, how the company grew, or what kind of clients trusted her with major events. They preferred the smaller version of Claire Westmore, the useful version, the one who stayed quiet and available. Then came Thanksgiving in November 2024, only a month before the Christmas that would finally break the cycle. Just before that holiday, Claire Westmore had closed a $600,000 deal with a major hotel chain. She arrived at her parents' house exhausted but proud, carrying success in her chest and hoping foolishly for one peaceful meal. Instead, Evelyn Westmore handed her an apron the moment she walked in and explained the turkey basting schedule. 23 employees reported to Claire Westmore, but her mother still treated her like unpaid kitchen staff on command. She took the apron anyway, basted the turkey, plated the food, and served 18 people while hiding her humiliation. At the table, Thomas Westmore praised Olivia Westmore for her stressful role as marketing director in his company. He boasted that company revenue was up 12%, while Claire Westmore sat silently beside a much bigger truth. She could have mentioned Stellar Events had grown 31% that year, but what would have changed in that room? They always found a way to shrink her success, redirect the moment, or act as if she were exaggerating. Later that night, with both hands in dishwater, Claire Westmore made one private vow she had never made before. She did not know exactly how she would break the pattern, but she knew Thanksgiving had to be the last time. 15 years of being overlooked, assigned chores, and treated as less important than everyone else's plans were enough. She dried her hands, hung up the apron, and drove back to the apartment her family had never even asked to visit. 2 weeks later, on December 22nd, 2024, a message arrived that would change everything at once. That morning, Claire Westmore sat in her corner office while snow drifted past floor-to-ceiling windows over downtown Denver. Her desk held vendor contracts, seating plans, coffee, and the ordinary tools of a company built through relentless competence. Daniel Hayes, her chief financial officer and closest professional ally, knocked gently and entered with a serious expression. He slid a tablet across the desk and told Claire Westmore she needed to see the email immediately. The message was from Catherine Sterling, chief executive of Meridian Holdings, a hospitality and real estate powerhouse. The subject line proposed an exclusive event services partnership for 2025, and Claire Westmore read it twice. Meridian wanted Stellar Events to handle all corporate functions, investor galas, client dinners, and launch events for a year. They had reviewed the portfolio, checked references, performed due diligence, and proposed a contract worth $2.1 million. Claire Westmore asked if it was real, because opportunities that large rarely arrived without conditions attached. Daniel Hayes confirmed it was real, then told her the catch was a required in-person meeting before signing. Catherine Sterling insisted on looking people in the eye before doing business, and she had scheduled the meeting in Miami. The date of that meeting was December 24th at 11 in the morning, right in the middle of Christmas Eve. Claire Westmore asked whether they could reschedule, still hearing the pull of family expectations inside her chest. Daniel Hayes said Catherine Sterling would leave for Switzerland on the 26th and would not return until mid-January. If Stellar missed the meeting, Meridian would move to its second choice, Lux Affairs, the rival chasing her clients all year. Losing Meridian would not only mean losing money, it would signal weakness and shift momentum in a watching industry. Winning Meridian, however, would open doors, expand into Florida, and turn Stellar Events from regional favorite to national force. Then Daniel Hayes showed one more line from the email, and Claire Westmore's breath caught when she read it. Catherine Sterling mentioned a Forbes feature and praised Claire Westmore's ideas about sustainable event design and leadership. The article had run in October, calling Claire Westmore a quiet force reshaping corporate gatherings across the region. She had never shown that magazine to her family because she already knew how they would minimize it. But Catherine Sterling had read it, remembered it, and wanted to meet the woman behind Stellar Events in person. Claire Westmore told Daniel Hayes to book the flight before fear, guilt, or habit could talk her out of it. He reserved a seat for the night of December 23rd and a hotel in Miami near Meridian's headquarters. As plans locked into place, Claire Westmore felt excitement, anxiety, and something darker moving beneath both. Her phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn Westmore that read, "Call me. Important." Experience had taught Claire Westmore that important usually meant illness or a demand, and illness seemed unlikely. She should have ignored the message, focused on the biggest opportunity of her career, and protected her peace. But 15 years of conditioning still lived in her body, so she called Evelyn Westmore back that morning. Evelyn Westmore answered on the first ring and immediately complained that she had been trying to reach her all day. It was barely past 10, and one text had been sent, but exaggeration always framed the urgency in that house. Evelyn Westmore announced that Christmas plans had changed because Olivia Westmore's friends would now be joining dinner. The guest count had climbed to 25, which thrilled Claire Westmore professionally but exhausted her personally on instinct. Her mother said that was exactly why Claire Westmore needed to arrive early and handle cooking, decorating, and everything else. She added that Olivia Westmore was too busy with work to help, as if that excuse had not been used for years. Through the glass office wall, Daniel Hayes saw the tension rise in Claire Westmore's shoulders and looked concerned. Claire Westmore said she could not do it because she had an important business trip that could not be moved. Evelyn Westmore laughed and mocked the idea of flying to Miami for what she called some little party. That dismissive phrase scraped old wounds raw, because Claire Westmore knew the meeting was worth $2.1 million. She explained that it was a significant client meeting, one of the most important opportunities Stellar Events had ever received. Evelyn Westmore brushed it off and said freelance work could wait because family should come first at Christmas. The word family had always been weaponized in that house whenever someone wanted labor, obedience, or silence from Claire Westmore. When Claire Westmore said she could not cancel, Evelyn Westmore asked whether she meant could not or simply would not. Claire Westmore answered both, and the line went still in the dangerous way she recognized from childhood. Then came the guilt, sharpened with practiced precision, about special plans, pressure on Olivia Westmore, and important guests. Her mother explained that the dinner was also networking for Olivia Westmore and for Thomas Westmore's business interests. It was networking for everyone except Claire Westmore, whose work only mattered when it served the family for free. Claire Westmore repeated that she understood the timing but would not be there to cook for 25 people. Evelyn Westmore called her selfish and said she always had been, despite years of service proving the opposite. She claimed Olivia Westmore gave and gave to the family while Claire Westmore could not manage one meal. Something old and heavy broke open inside Claire Westmore, not with noise but with a cold, irreversible clarity. She said no again, slowly this time, and made the refusal impossible to misunderstand or reinterpret later. Evelyn Westmore hissed and demanded to know what meeting could ever matter more than family on Christmas Eve. Claire Westmore answered plainly. A contract worth more than $2 million that could not be rescheduled. For one heartbeat, silence sat on the line, as if truth might finally have landed where excuses usually lived. Then Evelyn Westmore laughed again and accused Claire Westmore of inventing fantasies about being some great business figure. She said Claire Westmore only planned little corporate parties and was not a serious executive or mogul. 15 years of dismissal cracked fully then, and Claire Westmore told her mother she knew nothing about her work. Evelyn Westmore replied with cruelty polished by habit, calling Claire Westmore 37, unmarried, and careerless. She said her older daughter had wasted years on a hobby while Olivia Westmore built an actual future. Every word landed like a deliberate slap, designed to keep Claire Westmore smaller than the truth of her life. In a quiet voice that surprised even herself, Claire Westmore said she was going to Miami and would not return. Evelyn Westmore snapped that if she walked out on the family, she should not bother coming back at all. The threat should have shattered her, but instead Claire Westmore felt relief spread through the space where fear once lived. She said goodbye and ended the call before the old reflex to apologize could drag her backward again. For a long moment, Claire Westmore sat staring at the Denver skyline while her pulse raced and her mind steadied. Daniel Hayes came into the office and asked whether she was all right after seeing her expression through the glass. She told him her mother wanted her to cancel Miami and cook Christmas dinner for 25 guests instead. He shook his head slowly, not because he was surprised, but because he had watched this pattern repeat for years. When Claire Westmore said her mother told her not to come back, Daniel Hayes did not offer false comfort. He reminded her that he had seen her negotiate million-dollar contracts and solve crises that would break most leaders. Then he said the hardest truth. With her family, Claire Westmore always became someone smaller than she really was. She looked away because he was right, and because hearing it aloud made denial impossible. Daniel Hayes said this was the moment when she could either keep shrinking or finally choose her own life. Her phone buzzed with a text from Olivia Westmore saying their mother was crying and blaming Claire Westmore. Another message followed, accusing Claire Westmore of putting work before family and acting selfish for just one day. When Claire Westmore replied that she had work commitments, Olivia Westmore sneered that planning parties was not real work. That answer revealed everything, and Claire Westmore deleted the thread instead of defending a life they never respected. She told Daniel Hayes to keep the flight exactly as booked because she was going to Miami no matter what. He nodded, said she was making the right choice, and returned to finalize travel while she gathered herself. That evening, Claire Westmore went home to her loft with exposed brick, mountain views, and no family memories inside. It was a home her relatives had never seen because none of them had once asked if they could visit. She packed a carry-on with meeting clothes, contracts, her laptop, presentation notes, and one unexpected item from October. The magazine issue with her Forbes profile went into the bag like proof, like armor, like a private witness. Maybe she packed it to remind herself she had built something real, even if the people closest to her denied it. At 8:45 on December 23rd, Claire Westmore's plane lifted from Denver into snow clouds bound for Miami. Somewhere below, her family was likely angry, offended, and still expecting reality to bend around their assumptions. On the flight, Claire Westmore reviewed the Meridian contract and prepared answers for every question Catherine Sterling might ask. Around midnight, she opened the Forbes issue and found herself on page 47, arms crossed in her office. The article called Claire Westmore the quiet force behind stellar events and praised her meticulous attention to detail. It noted that she had built a $4 million event company without loud self-promotion or flashy theatrics. The profile highlighted a 93% client retention rate and praised her sustainable approach to event design. 3 CEOs were quoted describing Claire Westmore as indispensable, strategic, and the best in the business. She imagined showing the magazine to her family, then imagined the criticism that would follow and closed the thought. Her mother would comment on makeup, her father on revenue comparisons, and Olivia Westmore on somebody else's achievement. So Claire Westmore tucked the magazine away and focused on the lights of Miami appearing beneath the descending plane. As the aircraft taxied to the gate, a new email arrived from Catherine Sterling confirming the final signing details. It instructed Claire Westmore to bring identification and promised notarized documents, legal review, and finalized contract terms. Claire Westmore saved the email, then took a screenshot too because proof had become a habit, not paranoia. The hotel was all polished elegance and ocean views, whispering luxury from the lobby to the elevators at 2 a.m. She checked in, collapsed into the bed, and slept for 6 hours before the most important meeting of her career. On Christmas Eve morning, Claire Westmore woke to 11 unread texts and missed calls from family members. There were messages from Evelyn Westmore, Olivia Westmore, Thomas Westmore, and numbers she guessed belonged to relatives. She did not read them yet. Instead, she showered, dressed in her best charcoal suit, and reviewed her notes. At 10:30, an Uber carried Claire Westmore to Meridian's headquarters, a glass tower blazing in the Miami sun. At reception, her identification was checked, a visitor badge was issued, and the elevator sent her toward the 40th floor. As the elevator rose, her phone buzzed again with a call from Olivia Westmore, which she immediately declined. A voicemail arrived seconds later, and against her better judgment, Claire Westmore pressed play before the doors opened. Olivia Westmore said their mother was in meltdown mode because no caterers were available on Christmas Eve in Denver. She complained that their father was calling favors, nobody could help, and the dinner was collapsing without Claire Westmore. Then came one sentence that made Claire Westmore stop breathing for a second. Catherine Sterling was expected that night. The elevator reached the top floor while Claire Westmore replayed that line and tried to understand the impossible coincidence. If Catherine Sterling was attending her parents' dinner, then business, family, and every hidden truth were about to collide. A poised assistant in navy greeted Claire Westmore and led her through a marble foyer lined with awards and photographs. The corridor felt quiet and expensive, but inside Claire Westmore's head, questions were racing faster with every step. Did Catherine Sterling know Thomas Westmore through business circles, through Olivia Westmore, or through some social introduction? Did she already know that the woman she was meeting professionally was the same daughter absent from that dinner table? The conference room doors opened onto Biscayne Bay, legal documents, and Catherine Sterling waiting at the head of the table. She was silver-haired, elegant, sharp-eyed, and carried the kind of authority built from real decisions and real consequences. Catherine Sterling shook Claire Westmore's hand firmly and said it was a pleasure to finally meet her in person. Claire Westmore returned the greeting, sat down, opened her folder, and willed herself to stay fully inside the moment. The contract signing process lasted 45 focused minutes of clauses, logistics, contingency plans, and operational scrutiny. Catherine Sterling asked pointed questions about staffing capacity, vendor reliability, sustainability standards, and crisis management. Claire Westmore answered every one with earned confidence because 12 years of leadership had prepared her well. At 11:52, both women signed contract number MH202412223 while a photographer captured the handshake. The Miami skyline glittered behind them as the assistant notarized documents and handed Claire Westmore a leather folder. Catherine Sterling welcomed stellar events to the Meridian family and said she expected an exceptional partnership ahead. Claire Westmore thanked her, feeling relief, adrenaline, pride, and disbelief all move through her at the same time. As the meeting wrapped, Catherine Sterling mentioned she was flying to Denver that afternoon for Christmas Eve plans. She casually said she would spend the evening with the Westmores and asked whether Claire Westmore knew them. She described Thomas Westmore as a construction supply executive and Olivia Westmore as quite impressive. Claire Westmore's throat tightened, but years of control held as she simply said she had heard of them. Catherine Sterling added that she was told the Westmore Christmas dinner always had spectacular food and warm hosting. The food she expected was the food Claire Westmore had been ordered to cook, uncredited, as always. At the door, Catherine Sterling paused and said Claire Westmore's name sounded strangely familiar to the Denver Westmores. This was the clearest opening to explain everything, and Claire Westmore let it pass without using it. She only said Westmore was a common name because she would not beg association from people who had erased her. After Catherine Sterling left, Claire Westmore sat alone with the signed contract resting solid and heavy in her hands. A darker part of her wanted to watch the dinner fail, the excuses crack, and the family image finally splinter. But a larger, more exhausted part of Claire Westmore only wanted distance from drama she had carried too long. She had what she came for: a signed contract, secured growth, and proof that her worth was never their decision. Whatever happened in Denver that evening was no longer Claire Westmore's responsibility, burden, or unpaid job to rescue. She spent Christmas Eve away from the family noise, ordering food, breathing deeply, and letting silence feel like peace. For the first time in 15 years, she was alone on the holiday and discovered that alone could feel safe. Her phone stayed off while the Westmore house filled with guests, expectations, decorations, and a disaster no one had prepared for. The details of that disaster would reach Claire Westmore later through Helen Parker and other people who witnessed everything. Around 5:30, Evelyn Westmore entered the kitchen expecting trays, steam, aromas, and Claire Westmore at the center of it. Instead, she found empty counters, cold appliances. No turkey, no appetizers, no simmering pots, and no daughter to command. She called for Thomas Westmore, her voice echoing sharply through the decorated house as panic replaced certainty. He appeared adjusting his tie, only to realize dinner had not magically prepared itself in Claire Westmore's absence. Olivia Westmore came downstairs in a red cocktail dress, confused by the yelling and dressed for praise, not crisis. The next hour became pure chaos as phone calls went to caterers, restaurants, contacts, and every favor imaginable. But Christmas Eve in Denver offered no miracles. Caterers were booked, kitchens were closed, and help was unavailable. A desperate grocery run found shelves stripped bare with almost no prepared food left for a respectable dinner party. By 6 o'clock, the elegant holiday spread had collapsed into store-bought rotisserie chickens, bagged salad, cheese, and packaged rolls. The house still looked beautiful, but the table told the truth more clearly than any apology ever could. Guests arrived to lights, wine, and brittle smiles while Evelyn Westmore tried to act as though nothing serious was wrong. Helen Parker quickly sensed tension beneath the decorations and asked whether everything was all right with dinner. Evelyn Westmore smiled too tightly and blamed a vague catering issue, hoping polish might still outrun the obvious. 25 guests wandered awkwardly, balancing holiday small talk against the visible absence of the feast they had expected. At 7:15, Catherine Sterling arrived with calm confidence, greeting Thomas Westmore and complimenting the decorations. She thanked Evelyn Westmore warmly and said she had heard wonderful things about the Westmore Christmas dinners over the years. Evelyn Westmore's smile strained harder as Catherine Sterling's eyes drifted toward the sad chickens and plastic-wrapped rolls. Thomas Westmore pushed conversation toward business, while Olivia Westmore worked the room trying to distract from the missing elegance. Then Helen Parker, scrolling her phone, stopped abruptly and called Thomas Westmore and Evelyn Westmore over. On her screen was a fresh LinkedIn post showing Catherine Sterling shaking hands with Claire Westmore in Miami. The caption announced Meridian Holdings was thrilled to partner with Stellar Events and the brilliant Claire Westmore. Helen Parker looked up in confusion and asked whether that Claire Westmore was the same daughter they had. A circle of silence formed instantly around the phone as every nearby guest leaned in to understand what they were seeing. Evelyn Westmore's face lost color, while Thomas Westmore squinted as if clearer vision might change the facts. Catherine Sterling stepped closer, studied the post, and slowly said that Claire Westmore was the founder of Stellar Events. Evelyn Westmore stammered that Claire Westmore was indeed their daughter, but she did not understand any of this. With warm disbelief, Catherine Sterling explained she had just signed a $2.1 million contract that morning. The amount detonated in the room, hanging in the air so heavily that nobody could pretend dinner was the real story. Thomas Westmore went visibly pale because the contract exceeded his own company's annual profit by a painful margin. Catherine Sterling praised Claire Westmore as one of the most impressive executives she had met in recent years. She mentioned the Forbes profile, the sustainable vision, and the confidence Claire Westmore showed throughout the meeting in Miami. Olivia Westmore's voice cracked when she asked if Claire Westmore had actually been featured in Forbes magazine. Helen Parker was already searching, then found the article and turned the phone so everyone could see the image. There stood Claire Westmore in her office, professional and composed, wearing success her family had refused to notice. Guests began reading details aloud. 23 employees, millions in revenue, extraordinary retention, national-level corporate clients. The room that had once ignored Claire Westmore now buzzed with admiration, shock, curiosity, and growing judgment. Evelyn Westmore whispered why her daughter had never told them any of this, more to herself than anyone else. With devastating gentleness, Catherine Sterling answered that perhaps they had simply never thought to ask the right questions. That sentence landed harder than any accusation, because everyone in the room could see how true it was. Helen Parker admitted she had always wondered about Claire Westmore, who worked constantly while being barely mentioned. She reminded Evelyn Westmore about the stuffed mushrooms years ago and said she should have known talent was there. Edward Parker then turned to Thomas Westmore and asked why he had never mentioned such a successful daughter. He said they could have done business together long ago if he had known Claire Westmore led a company like that. Thomas Westmore had no convincing answer because silence had been easier for him than acknowledging the wrong daughter had excelled. Meanwhile, Olivia Westmore stood red-faced, holding her wine glass like the role of favored daughter was cracking in her hands. She muttered that Claire Westmore had never told them the truth and had let them believe she was unsuccessful. Catherine Sterling raised one eyebrow and asked softly what exactly they had chosen to believe about Claire Westmore. No one answered, because the answer was ugly, obvious, and standing in the center of the room for all to see. Catherine Sterling added that during their entire meeting, Claire Westmore had never mentioned any family connection to the Westmores. That revelation stung more than the contract value because it meant Claire Westmore had not wanted to claim them. Evelyn Westmore asked whether Claire Westmore had really said nothing, and Catherine Sterling confirmed it without hesitation. Helen Parker suddenly understood why Claire Westmore was not there, and why no spectacular dinner had appeared that night. She said Claire Westmore had been in Miami signing life-changing documents while they expected her to cook for free. Edward Parker added coldly that treating a successful executive like household help was a shocking misuse of family. Thomas Westmore tried to frame it as a private family matter, but the room had already judged what it saw. Catherine Sterling said that, from her perspective, the pattern looked like years of taking Claire Westmore for granted. She pointed out that the family expected dinner rolls and labor while Claire Westmore handled a major contract with her. Somewhere in the background, holiday music kept playing softly, making the collapse of the evening feel almost theatrical. After setting down an untouched glass of wine, Catherine Sterling thanked the Westmores and called the evening illuminating. She said to please give Claire Westmore her regards, because without that boundary, Meridian might never have met stellar events. Then Catherine Sterling left, and the front door closing behind her sounded like judgment passing through the whole house. The guests broke into whispers about the article, the contract, the daughter nobody had valued, and the dinner that never came. Evelyn Westmore sank into a chair while Christmas lights glowed around a party she could no longer control. Thomas Westmore retreated to his study, and Olivia Westmore fled upstairs with her image as host and heir in ruins. Across town, Claire Westmore sat in peace, unaware that the truth had finally entered the room without her help. On December 26th, Helen Parker called Claire Westmore directly and apologized for never asking about her real work. She said everyone had heard Catherine Sterling praise Claire Westmore as one of the sharpest executives she had met. Helen Parker also said the community now knew the truth, and the Westmores would not easily outrun that revelation. A small part of Claire Westmore felt vindicated, but a larger part only felt tired after carrying invisibility so long. When she finally turned on her phone, there were missed calls, angry texts, and voicemails from every member of the family. Evelyn Westmore demanded a call, then accused Claire Westmore of humiliating them in front of everyone that night. Olivia Westmore texted that they had looked like idiots before 25 guests and blamed Claire Westmore entirely. Thomas Westmore said the family needed to discuss what happened, but never once congratulated Claire Westmore on the contract. Not one message acknowledged her achievement, apologized for years of dismissal, or admitted they had treated her unfairly. Later, Daniel Hayes called and told Claire Westmore that she had absolutely made the right choice for herself. He said Catherine Sterling had praised her again after the meeting and that news of the Christmas dinner was spreading fast. For the first time, Claire Westmore truly believed she did not owe her family anything they had failed to earn. That night, she drafted a calm email stating the contract value, the years of unpaid service, and her new boundaries. She wrote that she would no longer serve as the family caterer, would be respected as an equal, and would not apologize for choosing herself. The story is complete from beginning to end, and nothing essential from your script has been omitted. No content is missing.